Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome this evening's guest moderator, Eric Cohn from IndieWire, and tonight's guest, Martin McDonagh.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, guys. Thanks for coming.
Okay, so the main character in this movie is played by Colin Farrell, and his name is Marty, which is an automatic kind of indicator that there must be some kind of autobiographical component to this story.
To a degree, Colin's character, I guess, thinks about movies in the same way and is kind of trying to get away from gangster films and guys with guns and films, and he kind of wants to come up with something that's a bit more about love and peace, and I guess I share similar thoughts.
Similar thoughts, or is there something that you could truly relate to about what he got?
I mean, that aspect of it, yeah. I've always got like, I love Peckinpah films and I love Terrence Malick films, and in one's head, you kind of, those two kind of argue and debate with each other, which are the coolest. But I love them, and so I think this is kind of exploring some kind of territory that goes between both.
It's also a serious crowd pleaser. I mean, I was at the world premiere at the Toronto Film Festival, which played at midnight when a lot of people would be really tired, and it really woke them up.
Yeah, there's lots of explosions, so that's always good for a midnight crowd.
Explosions, bloodshed, all kinds of things.
Dogs, rabbits.
It's total pandemonium.
It is.
If you saw the Cat trailer that came out today, that gives you a pretty good sense of
that was kind of fun. Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, if you contrast it with your last film and your first feature-length film in Bruges, tonally it's very different. I mean, this kind of fast, wild ride is not the same thing as this more subdued character piece that you did before.
Yeah, in Bruges was, I guess, more melancholy and kind of sadder. It still had a lot of laughs, but this is kind of a wild, it's almost like a roller coaster ride of kind of madness and great performances, and there are touches of depth and there's some kind of moral sense running through it, but it's kind of a crazier, wilder ride.
Well, and your approach to narrative is very interesting, because if you look at these two films as well as your theater pieces, they're generally just a handful of characters in one restricted situation, and whatever kind of plot you have is sort of secondary to all these other things that happen to be going on between the different people. So where do you go when you have an idea for this basic story, and then how do you end up sort of structuring it?
Well, I kind of don't really structure it at all beforehand. I kind of do what you said. I let characters just get out there and start talking to each other. And if you're starting off with characters in this who are kind of a little off the wall, a little demented, then they can kind of take the story anywhere. So this piece was written kind of in the same way as you kind of see on screen. There are meta touches to the film as a whole, and it's about a writer who's writing a film called Seven Psychopaths, but doesn't want it to be about violence. Which is the place I was in at the beginning of the film too. And then he's got a couple of friends who naturally are dog kidnappers, and kidnap the dog of a crazy psychotic played by Woody Harrelson. So it was, but because each of those characters are a little demented, they can take the story to very wild, crazy places with each scene.
So let's take a look at one of those scenes with the first clip here. Can you set it up for us?
I think this is just after Christopher and Sam have kidnapped the dog, and something dastardly has happened to a couple of the punks who caught up with them about it.
All right, let's take a look.
There was a little swear word in there, but they've somehow blanked that out. It's just smart. I didn't know they could do that in the visuals. That's wow.
Well, it's one of those things
Modern technology.
Where you got to go for the full product if you want to get the whole experience.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a red band trailer in the works.
Yeah.
As far as dialogue goes, you have three people in the room there, very different kinds of personalities. Do you read these things aloud as you're writing them, or how do you know when the sort of rhythm is right?
But for me, that's just a very natural thing. Like my background is in playwriting, and it's always been. I've always had a love of dialogue, and I'm happy when I can just let characters just keep talking but I mean they're three fantastic actors too. So as much as the characterizations are different, there's just always they're great comedians too. I mean they're pretty fantastic. Colin was wonderful at that in my last one, and Chris and Sam are always great at that.
Yeah, I mean, all three of those actors you've worked with in recent periods. Obviously, Colin was in Bruges, and then the other two actors were in A Behanding in Spokane, which just recently played on Broadway. So how do you go about developing that stable of actors? I mean, was it the sort of thing with these guys where you just call them up and say, I have another thing for you? Or?
It was pretty much as simple as that, yeah. I mean, I developed a close relationship with Christopher and Sam from the play, and I was in rehearsals and in at the show almost every night. So we had a cool rapport. Colin, we had a great time working on In Bruges together, and always said we wanted to get back to it. And Woody Harrelson I've known for quite a few years too, strangely. So yeah, it feels like family now. It feels like it's a little repertory company that I'm going to keep working with over and over again, I hope.
And 99% of the time at Q&A sessions, filmmakers get asked about improvisation and how much room they give their actors to do these sort of things. But playwrights tend to hate that.
Yeah.
So do you fall into that camp?
Yeah. Well, there is. I mean, I think I believe in being a writer, and I believe in writing, and I'm proud of it. So by the time you started shooting, the scripts, certainly for mine, has been set this was written about 7 years ago, and it didn't really change much at all between the page and the screen. But I'm kind of growing. If you're working with really good actors like these are, you kind of have to listen to whatever their process is. But because they each have some kind of, I guess, theater in their background, they respect, a good dialogue. They like it, and we might improvise into a scene, just before action is called. They might, be talking in a way that their characters would just be prior to where the scene starts, but pretty much every word that was on the page has made it to the screen.
All right, so let's take a look at another clip. You want to set this one up as well?
This is, I think, the arrival of Tom Waits into the film. Sam Rockwell's character has put an ad out in a newspaper for searching for psychopaths for Colin to write about.
Let's take a look. Having seen the film, I could say his story with the rabbit is really something else.
It's kind of out there, his backstory.
So I'm seeing rabbits, I'm seeing dogs. You can't really have animals in theater so easily. Was this a new thing for you?
We actually did have a cat in one of my plays, who actually survives. It was kind of, but no, I like a nice fluffy animal. The rabbits especially, the rabbits especially were a dream.
And then put them in terrible danger.
Yeah, but not too terrible. But the dog was a joy to work with. She's gone very Hollywood now, but when I first met her, she was very cared about her work, and but now it's just Botox and heroin, like me.
The usual tragedy, sir. So all of your films and plays as well have this sort of dark comic sensibility. At the same time, I think what's interesting about it, and you can see it just in these scenes here, is that there is a certain amount of morality in play. That these are, there's something outside of who these people are that we're supposed to bring to the table. Hopefully,
yeah. I mean, I think sometimes the violence is spoken of quite a lot in my stuff, but in this and in Bruges, I think. Well, Bruges especially was about, the moral implications of what happens to a violent man when something goes terribly wrong. This isn't probably quite as heavy, but it's certainly a questioning of movie violence in some ways, at the same time as we are utilizing quite a lot of movie violence. But I think it would be hard for me to make a film about that kind of stuff without questioning it.
because you find some. Does it? I mean, when you go see a movie that's very violent, let's say that some people were comparing this to a Tarantino movie when they saw it for the first time. Does that actually bother you?
The comparison, or
No,
the
actual
movie violence.
yeah.
It just, I think, for me, it usually depends on how it's done. You know, if it's done badly or stupidly or without any kind of moral center, then I don't think it should be banned or anything like that. But I just don't like it. This is more like a good questioning of every movie poster you see these days. It's got a guy with a gun in his hand in it, and it's just more kind of questioning whether or not that's completely acceptable.
It's very interesting when you look at the plays that you've done recently, something like The Pillow Man or Beheading in Spokane, where you really are talking about these troubled characters trapped in a room and also trapped on some level by these forces beyond their control. And it makes me wonder if you're a very paranoid person.
And why would you say that? No, not really. I'm pretty carefree and joyful as a person. The rabbits, I love rabbits and puppies. No, but I guess it's more of a questioning of society and governments, and I share those kind of sensibilities.
Well, let's take a look at another clip. You know which one we have here for number 3?
This is probably, which one is this? Gandhi. I think this one speaks for itself.
Let's do it.
Thanks.
Once again, a preview of the actual language you can get in the real product. So was that an actual conversation you had with someone? Or?
No, I think I just got to that page in the script and thought it was a fun thing. Because, I'm with Gandhi. But it's fun to sometimes set up a character who's the complete antithesis of everything you believe. Because you can just go to town with characters like that. I'm interested in that, in your characters not being part of you. And it allows you to explore language that you never would, but hopefully if the film itself isn't that way, you've done something right.
One thing I was thinking about when I was watching this clip is that you can do things here that you wouldn't be able to do if these people were just sitting on a stage, actual close-ups to emphasize different reactions, for example. You've been very successful as a filmmaker. You've made a short film that won an Academy Award, and then you made these last 2 films which have been well reviewed. So what is it about this medium that has kept you to a rather smaller output?
Laziness, really. No, they take up 2 years of your life, whereas a play, you, from start to finish, you can have something up and running in maybe 6 months. So they're hard work, and they're not hard work like being a nurse or a coal miner or something, but they take just 2 years of your life straight. So it's that's kept the output to a minimum. But I like both. I'll go back to plays, and I'll keep doing them, and I'll make another film someday, I think, but not for a while.
Well, clearly it helps that you have actors who want to work with you as well. I think this last clip should be a good illustration of that. Do you want to set it up before we go to it?
This, I think, is towards the end of the film, and Christopher Walken plays a guy who is a very firm believer in peace and anti-violence, and it's kind of a scene where the opposite is coming at him, and he reacts as only Christopher Walken can.
So Christopher Walken, I think most people in this room would agree, one of the great things that American movies have given us.
Yeah.
You've started working with him at a period in his career when he's almost entered into this postmodern self-awareness stage where he's in on the joke about himself. And
to a degree, I think. But at the same time, we're still trying to play Hans, the character he plays, as a straight character. But I think Christopher just brings so much to it, to his roles anyway. And our love of him goes with him, I think. But he's fantastic. We didn't want to become too meta or too self-aware about his part, but in a scene like that, it's so unusual to go that way, and that's what brings out the comedy, I think.
And so after you worked with him on Behanding in Spokane, where it's a very different kind of character, but also very Walken-esque, was there a conversation about how you wanted to move on to this other role with him?
To a degree, yeah. We just wanted to get his character in this is almost psychotically pacifist. He won't be violent, but everything about him is quite scary and dangerous. So it was more about not playing. In Behanding, he's a much scarier character and much more in your face and dangerous. This was kind of playing the opposite of that. It was a fun thing to explore, but it's a very fun. He's almost the moral center of the film in some ways. So it was more just keeping that aspect real. But Christopher's a very funny guy anyway, so I think all of his films are kind of getting the biggest laughs.
So one last question, then we'll go to the Q&A. There are, as the title implies, 7 psychopaths in the film, and we learn who they are over the course of the movie. I think at a certain point in time, we learn about pretty much all the cast of your movie. So one of the things that seems to come out or is implied is that there's a little bit of a psychopath in all of us.
To a degree, certainly there's an access to violence in all of us, but I think it's more about the fun. Like it's not a heavy film. There's something fun about just letting Sam Rockwell crank up the crazy stuff, and Christopher too. So I don't know. I think we're fundamentally nicer than that might imply.
And on that pacifistic note, we'll go to questions from the audience.
Just wait for the mic to come to you, please.
Hi, my name's Niall. I was just, did you have a part for Brendan Gleeson, or you've worked with him in a couple of movies, and there's Rabbits and there's Brendan and.
Not in this one, but I love Brendan and I hope to work with him again and again. He's actually right now making a film with my brother in Ireland. My brother did a film called The Guard a few years ago with Brendan, and they're working on the follow-up to that. So no, I'll hope if Brendan works with me, if he wants to work with me, I'll work with him again and again.
Right over here on the front.
Hi, Martin.
Hi.
I have a question. What were Sam Rockwell and Christopher Walken like from your point of view?
A dream. Like Sam's a buddy. He's the funniest guy. He's a brilliant actor. Christopher is he's a god to all of us. Maybe he is God. Maybe that'd be a great heaven. But just and Colin's lovely. Like I don't think I'd be able to make a film with dicks. I think it has to be family, and this is a really kind of fun film, and it shows, I think, the fun we had making it. I think it is kind of palpable on screen. So yeah, they're both a joy. They're both brilliant and just really nice guys.
All right, hang on.
We need waiting music.
Good day. Could you talk a little bit about the creative process of getting your work from the page through the Hollywood craziness to the screen? And I'm curious, second question would be, is it easier now that you've got the street cred of the Oscar and et cetera, to do that, or is it still the same grind? Thanks.
I kind of try not to deal too much with the whole Hollywood system. I kind of, after Bruges, we wanted to set this up so that a studio, we got some, about a third of the money from CBS here and Film 4 and BFI in England. But we needed to go with people who were happy with the script, who weren't going to give a single note, and would do, would go with the cast that I wanted and all of that. So there aren't too many people who are up for that. But CBS, I think, are trying to branch out into cooler, different types of filmmaking. So I think they were happy to go along with that. Film 4 always kind of does edgy stuff. So, but yeah, it was about making sure that undue influence was never there, and it was similar on Bruges, although Bruges was a bit more of a fight. But I think you need that. I think for something to come out honest and there's nothing really about the film that's kind of that you've seen before or that's phony. And I think you need to be in some kind of position of power to make sure that happens all the way through. And the second part of the question,
Oscars.
I'm not sure about that because I think Bruges was sort of set up just before the Oscar thing happened, so I'm not sure. I think the crew maybe don't look at you as much of an idiot when you've got one, but aside from that, I don't think it really overly helped, and it's kind of long since people don't really remember it now. But I think having made Bruges and having that come out well, I think helped open the doors to this.
Another one in the front row. Two more over here.
Has your work in film altered the way you view theater at all?
Not really, because I've already with my plays, I always wanted them to be quite cinematic anyway, and I always thought you can do anything that you want to do on stage. So no, I mean I haven't written one since the making of this, but I don't think it will change too much because of that. Because I like a nice gunfight on stage, and I like something dramatic to happen on stage too. So I don't think it's really going to change much.
Thank you for coming, and I want to ask, was the final choice of the cast your first, or did you have any others in mind?
Yeah, pretty much. They're all first choices. Yeah, I mean, I've loved these guys for a long, long time, and had a good relationship with Colin on the last one, and a great relationship with Sam and Christopher too. So, and Tom Waits, he's in it, and I've loved his music since I was a kid. Harry Dean Stanton pops up, and I've loved him for a long time too. So, yeah, it's great to be in a position where your first choices are all on board.
And one right here.
Thank you for coming in. I wanted to know, since you're working with so many big names, I'm imagining there's a lot of big personalities prevalent on the set as well. And did they ever clash, or did it come together to kind of make a very dynamic chemistry that made the film the best it could be?
Yeah, it was actually, I mean, they're really nice guys anyway. Everyone adores Christopher Walken, I think. You know, every younger actor thinks he's a genius, and so that was easy. Having worked with Christopher and Sam on the play, we felt kind of like we had an unspoken bond right there on the first day of filming. Colin's a great guy. Woody's a lovely guy too. So it's about getting people who aren't just brilliant at what they do, but are they're going to be part of a team. They're not going to be starry or egocentric, I guess. So yeah, it was like honestly a joy from start to finish.
Right here in the middle.
How you doing?
Hi.
I was wondering a little bit about your process because your foundation's in playwriting. How do you change, or do you change when you're writing a play as opposed to a film? Because you have a short amount of time to cover the visual medium and this and that. As with a play, you can be way more elaborate and free with your characters, and you have a ton to explore. I don't know if you just kind of keep it the same story, or with a film, it kind of changes the way you think about writing the story.
I think a film script, certainly when I was trying to do them, it was a lot harder to get my head around the whole idea because there's so many. Because I don't really think in images as much. So I'll have written the script and then go and often do storyboards and think of the images and think of the all of that stuff. It's not a natural process for me. But in terms of dialogue and character, it's kind of the same. I don't try and curb my love of dialogue, and it's there's something I guess about a film script. It being able to jump around in geography and time. In this, there's lots of flashbacks and stories within stories, and that it's just like a massive jigsaw puzzle that you have to get your head around. But now I feel like I'm gradually getting my head around it. I think in Bruges was much more of similar territory to the plays. It's basically three guys in one set, wandering around shooting kids, and that's what my plays are kind of about too. But this has a much more of a sort of cinematic sweep to it. The stories within stories, as I said, but just the cast of characters is much more massive. So it was a bigger challenge than the last one, I think, but I think we got there in the end. Thanks.
We have time for 2 more questions. Right here in the middle.
Hi, Martin. Just on what you just said there, do you find it easier to write characters that tend to be psychopathic? I just noticed that just from your playwrights when I think of like The Lonesome West, just something who's killing parents or a beauty queen or.
I think certainly having characters that are a little different to us are easier to write. I would find it hard to write something that was just sort of based on me or my friends. It's wilder, like Sam Rockwell's character in this, he at any given minute he can do anything that you're not expecting him to do, and he kind of does. And there's a joy and a freedom about writing characters like that. Lonesome West, similarly, I like that play a lot, and you can be as outrageous as you want to be too with characters like that, because it's not you.
And just another sub question was I know I read an article, I think it was with Fintan O'Toole, that you had said that before making 7 Psychopaths you had a couple of scripts written. What's next on the cards?
I've got another one. There's probably 2 more scripts banging about, but the one I wrote just a couple of years ago, it's set in America. It's got a very strong female lead, which is kind of what I used to do with the plays too, like Beauty Queen, as you mentioned. So I think, and this is very much like a film about guys, and it's very testosterone heavy, but I think the next one's going to be very different. Thanks.
Got time for 1 more?
It's a good crowd. No questions about budget or what camera did you use,
I've got one, actually. I've got one.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on Colin Farrell's sort of evolution over the past few years? Because I think anybody who's followed him saw him, 10 years ago doing a lot of blockbusters, or, attempted blockbusters, now to doing less of that kind of thing.
I love Colin. I think he's a great actor. I think he's underrated in some ways of being, a great actor. I thought he should have been nominated probably for Bruges, and he's a lovely guy too. I think he likes going back and forth between the blockbusters and the smaller independent films like this, and he's just a dream to work with. So long may he continue.
So there was something like 4 years in between in Bruges and this one. Does that mean we have to wait almost another half a decade until the next?
Yeah, I always loved the Terrence Malick idea of filmmaking. Just don't do it for a long time. So yeah, I think it's going to be 3 or 4 years. But I'll write something. I like to travel, and I like to be quiet and write. I don't think you can really come up with good stuff unless you take that time out and think, and don't become part of the process of Hollywood and all that.
So see the movie while you can. It opens this Friday here in New York. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you again to Martin McDonagh for being here. Thank you, Eric, for moderating. And thank you guys for being a great audience.